You're watching our special broadcast remembering Manmohan Singh. Today we pay our tribute to the former Prime Minister who pulled the economy out of an abyss.
I, Manmohan Singh, do swear in the name of God
प्रधानमंत्री के रूप में देश के विकास में और प्रगति में उनके योगदान को हमेशा याद किया जाएगा।
I am not going to be a candidate for the Prime Ministership if the UPA were to come back into power.
I can tell you that here at the G20, when the Prime Minister speaks, people listen.
माना कि तेरी दीद के काबिल नहीं हूँ मैं, तू मेरा शौक तो देख, मेरा इंतजार देख।
Dr. Manmohan Singh, India's former Prime Minister who unleashed India's economy as a former Finance Minister, has died at the age of 92. He was suffering from age-related ailments. A doctorate in economics from UK's Oxford University, Manmohan Singh's tryst with public service began in the early 70s when he was appointed as an economic advisor in the Commerce Ministry. Singh held multiple roles in top echelons of the bureaucracy in the 70s and the early 80s before heading to the Reserve Bank as its governor in 1982. One of the key hallmarks of his illustrious career came in the year 1991 when he, as the finance minister in the Nasheed government, unshackled the Indian economy from the licensed Raj and opened up the economy with liberalization, privatization and globalization. A twist of fate saw Manmohan Singh, who had never fought a Lok Sabha election till then and thereafter being catapulted to the post of the Prime Minister. He led a coalition of parties cutting across the political spectrum. His decade-long tenure saw the introduction of some landmark legislations, including the right to information, rural jobs guarantee, right to education, food security, and the Indo-US nuclear deal. In fact, the left party's opposition to the nuclear deal almost brought the UPA to the brink of collapse in 2008. But he held firm and stabilized India's relationship with the world's largest economy. Manmohan Singh's second term as Prime Minister began with firefighting the global financial crisis. The second term also saw a number of alleged scams, especially the 2G telecom spectrum scam and the coal sector scam. Opposition and critics often labelled him as a silent Prime Minister. Facing severe criticism, Dr. Singh quipped to the media in 2014 that history will definitely be kinder to him. Joining me now is Mohammad Nasheed, former President of Maldives. Mr. Nasheed, thank you very much for joining us. It's indeed a sad day. How would you recall former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, your interactions with him and his efforts to solidify the India-Maldives partnership for the future?
Thank you very much. It's indeed a very sad day for all of us today. Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was the first Indian Prime Minister or even the first foreign leader to come and address the Maldives Parliament. I was very fortunate to have worked with the Prime Minister on a number of occasions. The Prime Minister visited the Maldives in 2011 for the SAARC summit. And in fact, that was the last of the SAARC summits that we've had, and we haven't had a SAARC summit since then. The Prime Minister is a person who has brought not only India together, but also the whole of South Asia together. The Prime Minister was, I was fortunate because I got so much good advice. And he was, in fact, a fatherly figure to me throughout not only my presidency, but also even before and after that. One specific moment that I very vividly remember is the COP19, when countries were not able to come together and find an understanding during that conference of the parties, it was Prime Minister Manmohan Singh who brought all the countries together. And there was an evening when we had an unofficial meeting of 25 countries, which was led by the Prime Minister. I think we have lost a father figure for not only South Asia, India and South Asia, but to the world.
Right. Give us a sense also of his approach, how his approach towards the Maldives, South Asia, has shaped the geopolitics of the region over the last 10 years or so. 10 to 15 years, Mr. Nasheed.
Well, during into the turn of this century, the 21st century, we had seen China increasingly wanting to have a foothold in the Indian Ocean. And how we deal with that was through Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. His engagement, the Prime Minister's advice to not only to me, but to many other Indian Ocean island countries. And that had meant that we've been so far able to create safety and security to all of us, including India. So I think we would remember the Prime Minister as an Indian Ocean Prime Minister, a Prime Minister that has shaped affairs of the Indian Ocean more than any other previous Prime Ministers. Of course, we have good relations with all Indian Prime Ministers and all Indian leaders. But Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was one of the very first leaders to come into Indian Ocean, to bring the Indian Ocean islands together, and also to heavily be engaged in our development. A lot of the Indian assistance to the Maldives jumped much, much higher soon after the Prime Minister became the leader of India.
Right. Mr. Nasheed, any personal anecdotes, any engagements, any conversation with former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh that you recall and you may want to share with us?
The Prime Minister always told me not to react quickly, think back. And the Prime Minister always advised us that challenging or rather going and running after your enemies should not be the focus of our lives, but trying to work out and find solutions should be the focus of our lives. You would know that I came into government after 30 years of dictatorship in the Maldives. And I had been very, very badly treated, ill-treated in jail and so on, and so many others in the Maldives. But the Prime Minister always advised us to patch up and to go forward and to have a vision for the country and not be hung up with our pasts. So I remember Prime Minister very fondly because of a whole lot of very good advice that I had received from the Prime Minister.
Right. Mr. Nasheed, we have always seen Indian Ocean, and now more than ever, there is a lot of tension in the region as well. There are different powers. China, of course, trying to play a dominant role in the region, also in Maldives. Do you think in your conversations with Manmohan Singh, he somehow saw that happening?
Oh, the Prime Minister was very clear in what was happening right then, and also what might happen going into the future or going forward. China wanting a foothold in the Indian Ocean and the challenges that would create to India was always on the Prime Minister's mind. and how to deal with that, and how we can collectively, especially the Indian Ocean Islands collectively, should be addressing these issues was always on the Prime Minister's mind. And he went to Antu, which is the southernmost island or atoll of the Maldives, which is where we had that SARC summit. And during that time, he was very clear and aware that Indian Ocean safety and security was dependent on how India dealt with the Indian Ocean islands.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Nasheed, for joining us and sharing those personal anecdotes with former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. Definitely a big loss to the country, to the Indian Ocean region and the world. He was someone respected by world leaders across the spectrum. For the moment, we're joined by former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram. Mr. Chidambaram, thank you very much. You worked very closely with Manmohan Singh. What aspect of his life really stood out for you and touched you?
Dr. Manmohan Singh was clearly making a clean break from the past, from the path of socialism, state control, regulations, import control, export control, foreign exchange control. It was not an easy decision. He must have believed in it deeply and for a long time. When he got the opportunity, he did not flinch. He just went ahead and did what he thought was right according to the laws of economics. Of course, he was greatly supported by Mr. Narsimha, but the courage that Dr. Manmohan Singh displayed in breaking from the past over 40 years is, I think, extraordinary and unprecedented.
Now, during his tenure as Prime Minister for 10 years, he often faced a lot of criticism from opposition and some members of his own party about being a silent Prime Minister, a weak Prime Minister. He was none of that. But how did he take that criticism?
He didn't display any emotion at all. The old guard of the party, which was schooled in the time when Congress party adopted socialism as the goal, was naturally opposed to Dr. Manmohan Singh's reform measures. He patiently explained to them, and I think eventually they fell in line when they saw that the growth rate had picked up sharply and the people were happy with more jobs, more growth, more availability of goods and services. The younger members learned very fast. And he was a patient teacher. He will sit with each minister and listen to him and explain what good economics is. And other younger members learned very fast. So I think he took the good and the bad in stride and was quite stoically, but he was convinced that the path that we had taken was a path to prosperity and greater growth.
Right. Any personal anecdotes that you would like to share with us?
A number, but obviously we can't share it in a short telephone interview. I remember he was very hurt when, in the face of fierce resistance by the left parties, some members of his party had tried to persuade him to give up the Indo-US nuclear deal. He called me and said, in such circumstances, if he was forced to scrap the Indo-US nuclear deal talks, he would have no option but to step down. I said, it won't come to such a pass. Let's persevere. There is a committee and we are working on the left parties. But I understand that if on a matter of principle, the party does not support the Prime Minister would have to step down. He was the only time I know that he contemplated resignation was when there was fierce resistance from outside and from some sections inside the party to the Indo-US nuclear deal. But otherwise, he was quite stoical.
Apart from the nuclear deal, were there any other challenges that Mr. Manmohan Singh faced during his tenure as Prime Minister?
He did face some challenges, for example, but they were not insuperable challenges. They are not challenges which would be overcome. We had to compromise. We had to compromise on the extension of Aadhaar. We had to compromise on the coverage of the Right to Food Act. But he was willing to make those small compromises as long as the basic core contents of his policy were intact.
Do you feel the party leadership was kind to Mr. Manmohan Singh considering his contribution?
Mrs. Sonia Gandhi stood by him like a rock. She named him as Prime Minister, and she was vindicated when in the second election, and that is 2009, we got 61 more seats. Therefore, but then the errors were committed, not personal mistakes of Dr. Manmohan Singh, but the system did not exercise adequate control over the ministers and the ministries and their policies. And the system let him down in the second term, but he was quite stoical.
And final question, Mr. Chidambaram, if you had to describe Manmohan Singh's legacy, any unfinished agenda that Manmohan Singh may have had or any unfinished dreams?
Lot of his agenda is unfulfilled. It can't be fulfilled in 1 or 2 terms of a government. In fact, we need 6 or 7 terms of persistent reforms and consistent reforms to achieve the full agenda. We are interrupted from time to time. For example, Mr. Narasimha tenure and Dr. Manmohan Singh's tenure was indeed interrupted. And then again, there is an interruption after Dr. Manmohan Singh's government. I think the agenda of becoming a developed country, a middle-income country, cannot be fulfilled in 1 or 2 terms. It will take at least 4 or 5 terms of a determined leadership.
All right, so that was P. Chidambaram, the former finance minister, saying that Manmohan Singh needed more time to complete the reform process. As we wrap this coverage, we leave you with one of the most humane sides of Manmohan Singh. His love for Urdu poetry was well known. On more than one occasion, Dr. Singh, who was known for his proficiency in Urdu, resorted to couplets to respond to the opposition's jibes. We leave you with one such exchange between him and the late Sushma Swaraj.
आप उर्दू ज़बान समझते हैं बहुत अच्छी तरह से और शेरों में बहुत बड़ी ताकत होती है अपनी बात को आसानी से सहजता से कहने की। आज एक शेर पूछ करके मैं आपसे जवाब पूछना चाहती हूँ। तू इधर उधर की ना बात कर, ये बता कि काफिला क्यों लूटा। तू इधर उधर की ना बात कर, ये बता कि काफिला क्यों लूटा। हमें रहज़नों से गिरा नहीं, तेरी रहबरी का ख्याल है।
माना कि तेरी दीद के काबिल नहीं हूँ मैं। माना कि तेरी दीद के काबिल नहीं हूँ मैं, तू मेरा शौक तो देख, मेरा इंतज़ार देख।